Hi everyone, welcome to Arbu TV, where we interview the featured author of the month for the Authors, Readers and Books Unite group. Our current featured author is Steve Ashford, author of 3 books including The Tail, The Tree and The Star. Welcome Stephen, it's great to have you on the show. Would you care to tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Okay, right, I grew up in Kent quite a long time ago. Went to Reading University to study English. No, first of all, I went to Bristol University to study physics and quickly dropped out of that. Then I went to Reading University to study English and dropped out of that as well. I loved reading books, but I didn't love picking them apart. And then, goodness, I kind of bummed around for a long time. I worked in hospitals quite a lot, did lots of portering, hospital postman, that was quite a good job. And then finally I found my feet career-wise and got into Steiner Waldorf teaching. I don't know whether you've heard of it.
No, I've never heard about that until now. What was that all about?
Oh, right. Rudolf Steiner was guy born in the latter part of the 19th century. Very academic. He edited lots of Goethe's papers for a university, for a German university. Then got into theosophy, as it was under Madame Blavatsky. Finally left theosophy to set up his own society called the Anthroposophical Society, which is translates as the wisdom of man. So it's a very kind of esoteric, spiritual kind of thing. But he recorded loads and loads of lectures, so there's a vast literature that he's left behind. But he also started things like biodynamic farming, which you might have heard of. It's kind of organic farming with knobs on.
Yeah.
And he also set up a worldwide education community, which there are Steiner Waldorf schools in almost every country. So they've got this kind of spiritual underpinning, but a very unique educational philosophy and a completely unique curriculum. So I did that for 10 years and it was fantastic. It was an amazing job. Then the school I was working for, based here in the Midlands, finally crumbled because we weren't getting any government funding whatsoever. We just ran out of money and we were getting hassled by Ofsted as well. And the school closed after 80 years, which was really sad. And since then, I've just been kind of winging it. I'm doing supply teacher assisting in state schools and trying to get a writing career off the ground.
Yeah, I think we're all trying to get a writing career off the ground. But yeah, whereabouts in Kent did you live?
Maidstone.
My grandma used to live in Deal.
Oh, right, on the coast. Yeah, lovely. Yeah. There's still lots of lovely bits of Kent. It's so much more grown, built up than it was when I was growing up. But it's still a lovely county. Yeah.
It's a nice area of the world. Yeah. So your book, The Tail, The Tree and The Star, what was your inspiration behind it?
Goodness, every book I've ever started has just been from one idea. So it's kind of one image or an opening paragraph or just one line. So with The Tail, The Tree and The Star, I had a very definite image of this boy growing up in a house, being basically abused by his family, and just took it from there and saw where it led me. But it was written during lockdown, and it morphed as I was writing it into something that I wanted to really speak to the world. Yeah, having burrowed down many rabbit holes since I finished The Tale and the Tree and the Star, I'm now a lot further down the road of criticizing the way things are. And I would now have written The Tale and the Tree and the Star very differently. So it's very kind of light in a way on criticism of the way things are going. But it's still, that's the underpinning of it.
Mm.
Um,
How differently would you think you'd write it now?
I I would be a lot more political and a lot more critical and a lot more cutting, I think. But I think The Tale of the True Star goes some way towards getting towards those kinds of ideas.
Yeah, I think you did a little bit. Like it had some like religious undertones in it, I reckon.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, it's
yeah,
got a spiritual underpinning. I hope all my books do.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, I thought it was really good. Had I think it was quite subjective in terms of how different readers might interpret it.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I've very varied feedback on it.
yeah,
I think some people get it and some people maybe don't. But it was written primarily as an entertainment. I just wanted it to be fun. I
mm,
wanted it to be plot driven.
yeah,
I wanted it to be beautiful language. I gave myself this style. I mean, it's not a style that I followed in any of my other writing.
mm,
So it's very literate, I guess, very wordy. But I just wanted to have fun with the language and see where it would take me and set myself a challenge with it.
yeah. It was definitely fun and beautifully written. So so that's a big plus.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and that's good. And so you've also written another book called the Dual-Handled Letter Opener.
Yeah.
Got it right. Yeah. For anyone that hasn't read it, including myself, what is that all about?
Okay. Yeah, it's a bit of a tongue twister of a title. Someone pointed that out to me recently, but
Yeah.
it is what it is. Yeah, that was a story that I started taking my daughter, who was then kind of maybe 8 or 9, into school on the bus. And we were just sat on the back of the bus feeling bored. So I started telling her a story, and it developed. And I've only now just got round to putting it down on paper. So I haven't advertised the dual-handled letter opener yet broadly. I've advertised it to Sue Simpson's group, Catherine Black Books. But that's it. I haven't told anyone else, and I've only released it as an ebook. It's going to be a birthday present for her as a paperback, and her birthday is 21st of October, so that's going to be a surprise for her.
Yeah, that would really be a nice surprise. Very thoughtful as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really enjoyed writing it. I mean, it's just a middle grade fantasy. It's fun. It's hopefully entertaining.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. And there's another book as well that you've written that I've only like known about for less than 24 hours because you told me about it. Cloud Pictures, and you read it under pseudonym Martha Mudd. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's right. Well, that was the first book I wrote. Maybe at this point I ought to go back to my writing history because I've been writing since I was maybe 13, 14. I started off writing science fiction short stories for Interzone. I have no idea whether it's still going, but it was huge in the 80s and 90s. British science fiction magazine. So I submitted lots of short stories to Interzone as a teenager and got some good feedback, but didn't get anything published. And then I started writing a long kind of fantasy novel, which I kind of gave up on in my early 20s. Then started writing another fantasy novel, which ended up taking about 9, 10 years before I finally realized that it just wasn't going to work. It wasn't going anywhere. It was devastating to me because I'd always imagined myself as a writer. So to have this book just completely fail on me, yeah, put me into quite a bad place. I used to tell everyone that, yes, I'm a writer, but my muse has deserted me. And that was it. I stopped writing for 10 years. But during that period, I went into Waldorf teaching. And Waldorf teaching is so creative. I mean, you have to pretty much make up your own curriculum from scratch, do all your own lesson planning. And you have to teach the whole range of subjects. And it's also quite a lot of oral storytelling. So you'll tell stories off the top of your head or stories that you've memorized to groups of children. You don't read them, you memorize them. And Steiner said that there's a particular quality to orally told stories that aren't read. That really communicates to children, and I experienced that. I mean, it's wonderful training. So during the whole period of my Waldorf teaching years, I felt creatively fulfilled. I didn't feel I needed to go back to writing. I did write a play, kind of a hour-long play, I guess, so not quite full length, for a group of 14-year-old kids. And they had great fun performing it. The joy of that was I was able to write each part for each individual child. So they immediately slotted into their part and loved performing it. So, as I say, until I stopped Waldorf teaching, I didn't feel the need to go back to writing. When I did stop, I did feel the need. I felt a big creative hole in my life. And it was at that point that I wrote Cloud Pictures. I was also in a very dark period of my life. All sorts of things were going wrong. As I say, I just lost the Waldorf teaching job. My marriage had fallen apart. I was in quite a bad place. So I wrote Cloud Pictures under a pseudonym. It's written from the point of view of a 16-year-old girl. I was kind of imagining my daughter at that age and how she might be feeling and thinking. I was also remembering all of the very troubled teenage children that I'd been teaching. Some of them going through all sorts of psychological problems. So this was the roots of Cloud Pictures, and it was turned into a very personal book, a very emotionally charged book, but also a very spiritual book that I hope offers lots of hope. So that was my first book that I started on my writing journey.
Is that why you've written under the name Martha Mudd? Is she like the 16-year-old girl?
That's right. I mean, I kind of wanted to market it as if Martha Mudd was real. And in a way, I think I still could do that. A couple of readers have actually said, well, is this actually an autobiography? Is this true? I mean, they were that convinced by it. So, I mean, that was quite a good thing to hear, I think.
Some of the best books people think were real, but weren't. Like the best books are ones that like draw you in, and like really tells you a story about, and you think it's real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was what I was aiming for with Cloud Pictures, and I think I got somewhere close to it. Hopefully.
Yeah, that's good. So, as authors, we all deal with negative feedback. I mean, I can't imagine that you'll deal with negative feedback on The Tale of the Tree and the Star. But how? I'm curious. What is your opinion on dealing with criticism? And, how do you deal with it all?
Yeah, thanks, because I mean, so far I have been lucky. I haven't had very much negative criticism.
Yeah.
Actually, the first two readers I gave The Tale and the Tree and the Star to weren't that happy with it. One was an old-time friend from university, and I I think he felt it was just a bit too dark, and I think he got a bit overwhelmed by it. The other one was one of my ex-colleagues from the Steiner Waldorf School, and she just said it's too long, which is a kind of criticism.
Yeah. I was thinking it's a bit like how Stephen King writes books. You know how he can write like really long books, and he's like a master of language, isn't he?
Yeah.
And he can like describe things using like thousands of words that would require, like me, I would require like half a page or something.
Yeah.
I don't really know how to do it. I was thinking this is how like Stephen King would write a book.
Right.
Yeah.
I must admit, I have never read Stephen King. Maybe I ought to, but I've never read him. I've always steered clear of horror. It's one genre that leaves me feeling kind of uncomfortable. But
it doesn't just write horror though. He's written like Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile, that kind of thing. Yeah. Green Mile is quite a long book.
It's pretty horrific, isn't it? But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to read Stephen King before I die. I do realise that. I'm just kind of putting it at the moment.
Yeah, and I was thinking it was like in terms of like the language used and like the volume of it used is like my thinking was like Stephen King.
Yeah. Okay. I'll tell you the best bit of criticism I've got from the Telemetry and the Star was from my brother, who's been in New Zealand for the last 15 years. He moved over there with his wife, raising a family over there. He loves it. Haven't seen him for a while, which is unfortunate, but I did send him the Tale, the Tree, and the Star. He proudly proclaims that he hasn't read a book in 20 years. He's a very much a hands-on kind of guy. He's got his own landscape design business over there, which is doing really well. So he's not a reader. He never has been, but he did go through the Tale and Trin Star. He downloaded it to his tablet and apparently read it between jobs, sitting in his truck, and he got through it. And he finally said, "Well, I finished it." And I said, "Well, what did you think of it?" Hoping for some kind of feedback. And he thought for a long time, and then he said, "I'm glad I read it." And that was all I got from him. but coming from him, that was really, really nice.
What was his favourite bit? Did he not say what his favourite bit was?
No, I didn't. As I say, I didn't get anything else from him. All I got from was, "I'm glad I read it." So better than nothing.
Okay, so we all know that writing can be a tedious task and can be quite a challenging task. Just interested to know what challenges you've had to overcome with writing.
Okay, yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure I ever find writing challenging or tedious. Well, no, I certainly find it challenging, but never tedious. If you're not enjoying writing, then you shouldn't be writing. In my view, it's never tedious. It's never chore. It's quite often almost an addiction for me. Once I get in the flow of a book, then I have to keep going back to it. And I love it. If you don't love it, then why do it? There are challenging bits, certainly, when you think you're losing the plot of the book. I mean, I had my biggest challenge with my second unfinished novel, where I suddenly realized it wasn't going anywhere, and I just had to throw it in the bin after years and years of work, and that was a huge challenge to accept that. But the actual writing process, if you're not enjoying it, if you're not loving it, then it's not working.
I think the main challenge is probably editing.
Yeah.
I find that actual.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I edit all my own books and proofread all my own books. I do everything from start to finish. I know everyone advises you not to do that, but that's just the way I work. I don't want anyone else to meddle with my stuff. So I do everything from start to scratch. I write, edit, proofread, do the covers. I do everything myself.
Yeah, that's really good. As like indie authors, we pretty much have to do it ourselves, don't we?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
yeah,
I want to pay loads of money. Yes.
yeah. We've got like budgets on a shoestring, really, haven't we?
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
So, how do you cope with your own editing?
The previous book, the second book, was edited by Sue Simpson. You know, Catherine
Yeah,
Black. Yeah, she edited it. She did really well. Um,
she does
uh,
a good. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, publishing itself can be quite a challenging experience. Uh, what challenges have you encountered with publishing, like with marketing and promoting your book?
Right. Okay. I mean, for a long time after I finished Cloud Pictures, and then after I'd finished The Tale and the Tree and the Star, I was just looking for an agent. Um, and I kept on submitting. Really got nowhere. I got some interest from one agent for The Tale, um, and she said, "I really love this book, but I don't feel quite comfortable with representing you because it's a bit too genre for me. It's a bit too fantastical, so I'm going to give it to my genre colleague." She read maybe half a dozen pages and said it's too well written. So, yes.
Okay.
So at that point, I
Mhm.
suddenly realized I am not going to fit into any mainstream publishing model. I might
Mhm.
as well go it my own way. Um, and someone had recently told me about KDP, and I'd never heard of it before. So I thought, well, I'll just jump in and see what happens. I enjoyed the process of using KDP, Kindle Create. It was fairly straightforward. I had a couple of problems with it, but nothing that couldn't be ironed out.
Yeah.
So yeah, since then I'm just self-publishing. As far as marketing that goes, though, I've got no idea, to be honest. No idea. I'm just hoping it kind of gathers some kind of momentum on its own. I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen at this stage, but as long as
Mm.
people are enjoying it, I guess that's the main point, isn't it?
Yeah. So you pretty much rely on word by mouth, don't you?
Yeah, that's right.
Mm.
I mean, I've enjoyed interacting with Sue Simpson's group. There's lots of good people on there, and we're all reviewing each other's books and getting lots of good feedback.
Mm.
I mean, it's a great community, and if I don't get any bigger than that, then it's still been a great experience, and it's not going to stop me writing. So yeah,
Mm. Yeah, it's a journey that counts, doesn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, as a published author as yourself, do you have any advice for anybody starting out?
I start now. I don't know. Just love what you're doing. I mean, if as I said earlier, if you're not enjoying writing, then don't bother. Just be as creative as you can. Don't don't try and write for a market. Just try and write for yourself. Be true to
Yeah,
your own voice, and love what you're doing, and hopefully you'll have something finished at the end of that process. And when you've got something finished, then put it out there and see what people think of it. I mean, it's simple in a way. In practice, it can get very complicated and very lots of hard work. But in a way, it's simple. You write because you love it, and then you want to share it. So, and the beauty of KDP is that you can now share it. So,
yeah,
uh, yeah.
yeah, that's good. Yeah, so is there anything else that you've got in the pipeline you can share with us?
Right. Okay. Well, having finished the dual-handled letter opener, the first part of this story that I originally told for my daughter on the back of the bus on the way into school, that first book is only maybe two-thirds of the story I told her. So she's expecting more. So I've got to write a second book, and I'm kind of maybe a third of the way through that at the moment. But I'm now thinking that 2 books isn't going to be enough. 3 books might not be enough. And if 3 books isn't enough, why not go the whole hog and do 7? let's do a J.K. Rowling. Yeah, I've got a particular plan for it actually, because it's kind of astrological, which is one of my interests. The first, it's based around the story of these 7 jewels, and they're all linked to the 7 planets, the 7 astrological planets. So if I do 1 book for each planet, that's 7 books. It also is kind of copying C.S. Lewis in his Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, which is also 7 books. There's a very, very interesting academic piece written on C.S. Lewis, and I've forgotten the name of the author, but he claims that each book is actually based on one of the 7 planets, and he follows the imagery through, and he makes a very convincing case for it. But he says since C.S. Lewis was intimately involved with studying medieval literature, which is just shot through with astrological knowledge, it would make perfect sense for him to write a series of 7 books written based on the 7 planets. So I'm thinking of doing the same thing. So I've set myself a challenge.
That's really good.
Yeah,
I'll definitely be interested in reading that as well.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I must admit I haven't read one of yours, but I will soon, hopefully.
You better.
So only so much time in the day, isn't there? But
yeah. And so we're almost coming to the end of the interview now. Is there anything that you would love to share with the viewers that I haven't asked you about yet?
I don't think so. I don't know. Just a bit of gratitude, I think, to whoever ends up listening to this, and whoever has read any of my books. Just huge gratitude that you've taken the time to read them. You've given me feedback. You've given me some great reviews, some of you. Thank you. And it just makes it all worthwhile.
Cool. All right. Yeah, thank you for that. You've been a great interviewee on the show. So thanks for watching, everyone. We've come to the end of the show now. Thank you and goodbye.
Cheers, Lucas.
Cheers. Thank you.